to your point on integrity, and I know you to be that way, so don't answer if you don't want to. But I'd love to just get your thoughts. And you made a great point. I had the similar conversation yesterday. Chris Williston at IBAT was talking about 10 years ago and this shift. I think we all remember that time, right? It was kind of the birth of mobile time and how everything has really shifted since then. And starting there is really where the beginnings of a lot of this third-party conversation really started to flare up, right? And fintechs and friend or foe, and how do we work with them? How do we empower them? All of this downstream sort of interoperability. How does my bank extend things in different places? And the speed just went through the roof, to your point. What's your general sense there? I mean, it sounds like you're very much wanting to empower that type of thing. I've seen there's a lot of cores that are very anti or closed, right? They want you to buy their things and use their stuff. And I think, I've seen you guys and others that are a little bit more along the lines of, we want to have the best stuff, but we don't want to block you from using others. What's the go forward strategy on that?
I think what you just said is exactly right. I think we want to create great product, but we realize that the product we create is not going to satisfy everybody's needs. And so at our customer experience conference just a couple of weeks ago, we had 8 or 10 fintechs that we don't even have the relationship with yet, but we wanted to expose our customers to the kind of capabilities that these companies do have. And so I think it's a matter of create great solutions and recognize that some customers are going to want something other than what you create. There's no way to please everybody with a single solution. The industry is evolving, and unless we all kind of realize that that's the case, I think it's going to be a really difficult thing for some people to continue to grow. I think we have, we're the right company, the right time in our history to make a major impact because we're embracing this and we have the right side, the right scale, the right vision, the wherewithal financially to make these investments. And I think it's going to play out well for our customers and for our employees and ultimately for our ownership.
Well, and to your point, you guys have 10% of the banks. We need you to succeed, right? That's right. I mean, nobody's pulling for you harder than us, right? I mean, that back to the point on PPP and community banks, I've been telling people more and more of late, there's sort of just an AntiCore rhetoric that's come up recently, right? And legacy core and rah-rah.
I hate that word.
I hate it. My view is at the number of core conversions that are done each year, and even if you sold a bajillion core swaps, how much bandwidth is there to actually convert? The world is where it is, and we need to bet on the horses that we have in the race, right? And have more conversations like this. And, to your point, listen to the customers more and work the problem. There's no silver bullet. Changing your core is probably not the answer. In very few cases do we see that as the answer, right? And so I think that piece is really important. And then to your point, we've got community banks are changing. There's less and less sort of if you could paint me a picture of what does a community bank look like, that castle is not, it doesn't have the white picket fence like all of them used to. Some of them have different things, right? And so there's a lot more of a niche focus, affinity focuses, some focused on small businesses or wealth, and those areas. I think to your point, David, it's interesting when you think from your perspective on third parties. You guys having a great online banking or mobile banking, sure, that may be ubiquitous, but something odd like Spanish, right? Or something odd like a wealth management tool. It's probably a small portion of your customer base that would even have any interest, and probably not maybe the best use of your time and resources to the whole. And so being able to partner up with these cool little fintechs coming in, hey, now we have a really good strategy that keeps you focused on the whole and opening up weaponry, right? And allows everybody to go out and find those specific niche needs. I really like that strategy.
I think you nailed it. I think you said it perfectly, Tanner. That's exactly what the strategy is. We know wealth management's a great example. It's or credit cards. There's not a lot that are going to credit cards, or just go down the list, and everybody's going to have their niche. And I can think of a half a dozen or maybe a dozen banks right now that have those niche markets, things that they serve. And they're going to have a tool that's pretty unique. And am I going to invest millions to create it and never get money back? I would rather partner with somebody and make that connection through API seem so simple and so seamless that the end user, the customer of the bank, doesn't know where it's coming from. They just know that their needs are being met.
That's great. And I think it's a healthy look from, I guess we're kind of the middlemen, right? But we're the non-political of cores or banks or vendors or fintechs, or we're just kind of in the middle watching everything with the data. I see it as a really healthy ecosystem, right? That we have lots of little fintechs that are, smaller companies, very laser focused on their niche. Folks like you are more of the platform providers that allow them to plug in and deliver those services to the bankers and their customers. That's awesome. And in a future world, if those little companies grow into something that's a little bit more ubiquitous and one of the cores purchases them, great.
Yeah.
That's a healthy, evolving ecosystem. What we have right now, in my view, the problems that we have in community banking with M&A and not enough de novos, it's a very similar problem that we've had the last 5 years on the technology side. We've not had enough technology startups that are kind of niche focused. And the ones that we have had have been very platform focused. Well, yuck, that makes the platform providers a little uncomfortable, right? But we're seeing a bunch of these niche focused players popping up right now. I hope that continues. And I think guys like you empowering them, that makes it continue, and it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And quite frankly, even, the neocores that are out there, I don't see that as a bad thing. I think it causes all of us to improve. When we have that kind of competition, if we're looking at it as a bad thing, we're looking at it wrong. It's an opportunity. It's the way I look at it.
You bet. And
I had to grab
you got a new word,
neocore?
neocore?
Yeah, neocore.
We call it FinTech Core. But think about those days we had payments core. You've got or you call it issuer core, FinTech Core, right?
So this is pretty cool. So you might have heard about this. We started a BAS association. So a lot of the bigger BAS, I don't mean asset bigger. I just mean they do a lot of fintechs. A lot of those players that are in charge of a lot of accounts and cards and all that were our official board or
the numbers are kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding. So
yeah, we're tallying up the numbers, David. And it's like, is this the largest bank in the country?
I think it is.
It is.
We're getting
it's really looking that way.
So here's where it gets cool. One of the things they tasked me with was vocabulary. What's the end user? So really some of these things get pretty interesting. And then you start going through the vocabulary and you kind of tie that back to a regulatory issue. And then you do your vocabulary lesson. And so like neocore, that's why I wrote that down. I thought that was a neat one I could add there. We had been calling them, modern cores or different things there, but
we're seeing all this and having
sidecar core
conversations with the regulators, watching the different organizations, the associations. To your point, David, I think everybody at the same time is kind of looking up, banding together, working together, and trying to open lines of communication. It feels like a moment to me where the big four are largely the enemy of all of us. The big four.
I hope not, since we're four.
Yeah, big four banks. Big four banks.
Oh, big four. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think, look, if I'm Visa,
he's like, hold on.
Yeah, hold on.
This call just took a turn.
if I'm Visa, if I'm CSI, if I'm any of the larger players, when we have Jamie Dimon selling a Zelle and we're reselling Zelle for him, right? I think that's a wake up moment for everybody, and so everybody's kind of working together and banding together. It's a good thing.
So let me ask you a question. This relates to the BAS stuff, right?
Yeah.
So kind of this, idea. So let me kind of set the stage here that, gosh, opening a new branch is really difficult. There's, like you mentioned, lots of partners in fintech companies, whether they're products that you issue through your bank or whether they're products that you provide your infrastructure and pass through so that they can serve a different niche of the market, ethnically or whatever. They're so diverse in their products and so widespread in the underserved and the unique markets that they serve. I think it's so cool. Now, when we begin to talk about CSI specifically with BAS banks, how do you see this moving into, like, if you were to sit down and say something to your whole customer base right now and say, guys, this is something I think you should do, or I would be really leery of that, or only do it if you're in this situation. What's your advice?
And they're making a lot of money.
Well, I think that they first need to educate themselves as to what this is. And they also need to understand what their strategy is. I don't think every bank that's out there is a bank that could be a sponsor bank for banking as a service. I believe there's a good number of banks that can, and probably some that don't realize they can, that could be. So I think it comes down to understanding their strategy, understanding the technology we're talking about, the opportunity we're talking about, and then maybe being willing to not white label something, to realize that in banking as a service, your name may not even be mentioned. It may be another company's name that's out there. You're providing the rails for it to happen, and sponsoring a payment to take place or whatever the case may be. And it may not be First National Bank's name that's on the card. It might be somebody else's. But if they're looking at it from name recognition, they're looking at it wrong. If they're looking at it from, changing the ecosystem, if they're looking at it from the standpoint of generating revenue for their bank, then they're looking at it right. But it all comes down to education and aligning with your own strategy.
I think that was well put. I
Very well
appreciate you. That's not the question. I think most people would just step up and say, I'll field that one, so
I didn't have a choice.
You're right. No, I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
The banks for us, we kind of have a singular focus. It's not a secret around here that, we're like, hey, show banks how to make money. That's a good thing, right? It's not that think bankers should be oppressive or take over the world, or banks are good or banks are bad. It's just, it's a better structure. It's a safe structure. And as we reach this moment in time to where, fintech is kind of just getting redefined as we speak. Every day there's new things happening. The more that we fold this under the banking regulatory structure and environment, the safer it is for the consumer.
And we're seeing that occur. That's marching forward. And there's little bite by bite.
Little pieces,
There's little pieces that now this is safe. Now this is safe, right? And we're getting some, and it's been fun, I'll tell you, to be at the forefront of that and in those conversations. You talk about watching the sausage get made. This is cool.
Yeah. But also you kind of talked a lot about, it's a revenue opportunity, for the bankers, and
absolutely.
Really cool thing you
the
said.
Most profitable.
Not for everybody, but it's really just an extension of stuff that you already do,
right?
For the most part. And if you've got the, back to your conversation about, investing in the new technologies in the cloud and things like that, that better enable those things for your bankers, that's a super positive opportunity moment for all of the banks that are on your core.
Well, I will tell you, we could operate that way in our existing environment, but we're not focused on the next 12 months. We're focused on the next 5 years. And in order to enable that growth and that success in the next 5 years, we think that retooling in this public cloud infrastructure, where it is cloud native, where you get the benefits of all the, the speed and the scale and all that, is going to be critical, not for the next 12 months, but it's the next 60 months that we're focused on and beyond.
I love it. And you talk about a wrap for me on why I always tell banks, change the core. Let's talk through this, right? And oftentimes I tell them, you have a today problem that you're trying to solve. And you're talking about going down a path that's going to take years, and you're going to blow up the bank. All your customers are going to call on fire, right? It's going to be bad. And will it get you anything drastically different? But you've been sold that it'll get you that one thingy that you're paying today. Be careful, right? And don't be sold to. I rarely find that a big core swap is the right answer. Now, to your earlier points, there's been a lot of shift, and I think from tons and tons of consolidation amongst cores over years now, and then certainly a shift in focus, which may be a good thing. I think.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
I different focus, different cores now.
I'm sorry about that. I would say that, regarding a core shift and switching, of course, I want them to switch.
Of course.
But
I would, the winner, right?
Yeah. I would definitely want them to switch. But, there's some things that they could do without switching that would make things better. Unfortunately, there's also a shift of focus at some of these cores. And so while they may be able to improve some things in the short run, what we're looking at is how do we deliver a quality solution in the long run? And is it a momentary bit of pain that they have to deal with on the conversion side so that they could actually accelerate the growth of their organization going forward? And we have case study after case study after case study that shows, because of the way we look at our partnerships and how we look at their strategies and how we try to align ourselves to those strategies, that success is pretty substantial and can be pretty substantial. So while I understand the advice that you give, I hope in the case of CSI, you would, overlook that a little bit.
Of course. No, I think to your point, we're beginning, and this may be pushing a little bit too far into future thinking, but it feels to me, just being close to it, that the cores are beginning to adopt fairly different mindsets and differentiate. Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I do think that could lead us to a place where, hey, if you're on a core that's hanging a left and maybe it's David Culbertson and these guys are going right and you want to go right, makes sense. But there's for years, there wasn't just a heck of a lot of differentiation between cores, right?
Right.
You've got little things, but holistically, I mean, everybody's serving community banks, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a shift now, and there's a lot of focus.
So I'm going to
Keep in mind the number of platforms. So when you're talking about a shift in core, there are some platforms that a number of banks are running on that are not getting updated, right? There's if you take the two of the top three, we'll say, in particular, they have so many platforms and they're putting so much focus on maybe one or two of those platforms. They're going to force a conversion anyway. So that when that happens, why not look at, the opportunities that lie outside of that?
Well, to your point, the banks rarely know which of those platforms are, but we all do, right?
Yeah.
We all know the things that are being sold and aren't, and what's getting upgraded, and nobody wants to say the word sunset.
Well, and I think too, one of the things that you've kind of said this between the lines enough today, I hope everybody kind of caught it, that guys, there's things that change that seem really hot at the moment, but don't worry, the whole market catches up to it. So if somebody has a new payment feature and you're like, man, I got to change my core. And it's like, hold on. Everybody will have that payment feature. That's not a panic moment. But when you get to the structural issues behind the core, can I do an LOC and fund it to a different DDA and things like that? That's where you get into, ledgering capability and prowess.
And everybody can do that.
But you're going to, exactly. That was it. That was really what I wanted you to say. Not
everybody can do that. Listen, there are good people in each of these companies too. I'm friends with people in every one of these companies. You mentioned it earlier, Tanner, because of AFT. There's some great relationships that get formed there. I have nothing bad to say about the individuals or the company. I think our strategies are just different.
Right. And I think that's a good thing.
That's perfectly right. What it's all about, guys. Find your strategy, and then let's find the products and the services that fit that strategy.
Great.
David, thank you so much for coming on today and riding with the FinTech Cowboys.
And I appreciate
it's been my pleasure.
For community banks at the beginning there.
Yes.
We need more people on the side of community banks. You're one of them. So thank you.
100%.
All right.
Good to see you guys.